Apex Bank, we believe every financial journey deserves flexibility. That's why we've designed low-stress, minimum monthly payments tailored to fit your lifestyle, your budget, your peace of... That minimum payment you just made signed you up for a 30-year plan on a pair of sneakers. Not a metaphor, a structural description. The shoes are long gone, possibly landfill, definitely forgotten. The payment plan on them is still active. It will outlive 2 smartphones and possibly the friendship that talked you into buying them. Here's what you think is happening when you pay your credit card on time. Every month, minimum due, never late, gold star behavior, the little green checkmark version of adulthood. You think the number is going down. That's the whole deal, right? You swipe, you owe, you pay, the owing shrinks. It's arithmetic. It's supposed to be the most boring kind of arithmetic there is. Nobody gets suspicious of a number that's supposed to shrink. Pull out a statement, any statement, 12 months into faithful minimum payments. Look at the balance from a year ago. Look at the balance now. If you're carrying a normal card at a normal rate, that number moved less than you'd expect from rounding error. Sometimes it moved less than the late fee you didn't even get charged. That's the first contradiction. And it's not a glitch. It's not your bank being sloppy. It is, in fact, the single most carefully engineered number on the entire page. So here's the mechanism, and it's almost insultingly simple once you see it, which is usually how you know it's expensive. Most big issuers set your minimum payment using one formula, 1% of your remaining balance plus whatever interest accrued that month. Not 1% instead of interest, 1% plus interest. The interest gets paid first, in full, always. No negotiation, no loyalty discount for showing up on time for 3 years straight. What's left, the 1%, is the only part that actually touches the debt. It's less a payment plan and more a cover charge. You pay to remain a customer of your own past decisions. On a $5,000 balance at today's going rate, somewhere around 22% APR, that's roughly $90 of interest alone every single month before you've reduced anything. Your minimum payment built on the standard formula lands around $140. $50 of that chips at the balance. The other $90 just paid the bank for the privilege of letting you keep owing them the $5,000 you already spent. $90 a month, every month, for the ongoing service of being in debt. Most subscriptions at least send you a show. And here's the part that should really bother you. Because your payment is 1% of the balance, and the balance keeps shrinking however slowly, your payment shrinks too. Next month, it's a little less. The month after, less again. 140 becomes 138, becomes 136, and somewhere in there, your brain, which is not built to distrust a number that keeps getting smaller, quietly files this under progress. You are being congratulated in real time with a smaller and smaller bill for making almost no progress. It's the financial equivalent of a treadmill lowering its incline every time you slow down and calling it a reward. The bank calls this affordability. A mathematician would call it a decaying exponential, a curve that gets closer and closer to a finish line with zero contractual obligation to ever cross it. Debt that technically resolves itself and practically never does. There's a name for the thing actually running this show, and it's not the bank and it's not you. It's the button. The one pre-selected the moment your statement loads, the one that says minimum due, sitting there in soft gray, requiring no decision at all. Call it what it is, the default. It doesn't advertise. It doesn't need to. It just has to be there. First, easiest, already checked every single month for 30 years, and it wins by doing absolutely nothing. Run that formula out on paper. No missed payments, no new purchases, saintly behavior the entire way, and you're well past 2 decades before that $5,000 is gone. Some versions of the math, depending on the exact rate and floor, land past 30 years. I want to be precise here because precision matters more than outrage. That number is a calculation, not a headline from a bank report. I built it from the actual formula issuers use, confirmed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau at the actual average rate reported by the Federal Reserve this year. It is illustrative. It is also structurally correct. Compare it to a real published example, because one calculated number alone shouldn't have to carry a whole argument. A $5,000 balance at 22%, pay a flat $150 a month instead of the shrinking minimum, and you clear it in under 4 years. Same debt, same rate. The only variable that moved was whether the payment shrinks with the balance or stays put. That gap, 19 years versus 4, is not a personal finance tip. It's a design decision made once by someone in a product meeting and never revisited on your behalf. Run the full arithmetic on the pure minimum out to its natural end, and the interest alone adds up to somewhere close to $9,000. Again, a calculation, not a bank's press release, built off the same formula and today's rate. Almost 3 times the shoes paid to a bank for the service of still owing it money. Take that same difference, the extra $50 a month between the shrinking minimum and a flat payment, and park it somewhere boring instead. Index fund, historical average return, nothing exotic. 30 years later, at a historical average return, not a promise, somewhere north of $60,000. Same $50, 2 completely different lives for it. Now, you are legally owed a warning about this. This is the part nobody talks about because it's technically already been handled. Federal law requires every credit card statement to carry a box. It has to state in plain numbers how many years it will take to pay off your balance at the minimum and how much you'll pay in total if you do. It's been mandatory since the Card Act. It is sitting on your statement right now, probably on page 2, in a font that suggests the bank hopes you have somewhere else to be. Buried further down in a settings menu almost nobody opens, most issuers will quietly let you move your due date. Line it up with payday instead of some arbitrary day the bank picked when the account opened, and suddenly a flat, larger payment stops feeling like a stretch and starts feeling almost normal. It's not a secret exactly, it's just never been anyone's job to mention it. They didn't hide the math. They disclosed it exactly as required in the exact format a federal regulator approved, and then built an entire payment default around the assumption that disclosure and comprehension are 2 very different events, and that most people treat page 2 of a statement the way most people treat the terms and conditions of a software update. You were told. In writing, regulated writing, audited writing, the kind of writing a lawyer signed off on. And the default is still there. On almost every app, 1 tap, no scrolling required, practically begging to be the path of least resistance. The full balance option sits 1 line down. Same font, 0 additional urgency, like a fire exit nobody bothered to light. Transparency, it turns out, is not the same thing as a nudge in the other direction. Zoom out, because your $5,000 is not a special case. It's a rounding error in a much bigger number, and rounding errors added together apparently amount to $1 trillion now. Americans are carrying $1.25 trillion in credit card debt this year, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Average balance per person with a card, somewhere around $6,500. Average rate on the balances that actually accrue interest, north of 21%. That's not people buying yachts. That's groceries. That's a car repair. That's a deductible. That's a kid's birthday party that got slightly out of hand, all financed at a rate that used to be reserved for loan sharks and back alley arrangements, and is now just called Tuesday, printed on a card with a nice metallic finish, so it feels less like a loan shark and more like a loyalty program. And here's the genuinely uncomfortable part. Nobody in this story is the villain, which somehow makes it worse. The bank isn't evil, it's optimizing. A lower minimum keeps more accounts active longer, and active balances are the entire revenue model. You're not irresponsible. You're following the exact instruction printed on the bill in the exact box the bank is legally required to print. The regulator did its job too. Disclosure exists, format is compliant, ink is completely legal. Nobody broke a rule anywhere in this chain. The outcome still looks like 30 years of payments on shoes that fell apart in year 2. There's an old card reader somewhere, the kind with the thermal printer and curling receipts, obsolete for a decade, replaced by a chip and a tap. Easy to think of it as harmless, a relic for a glass case. But every swipe it ever made opened one of these decaying little arithmetic problems, and most of them are probably still running, quietly, in somebody's wallet, in some spreadsheet at some bank, long after the object itself got unplugged. And here's the thing about a 30-year formula. It doesn't need you to notice it. It doesn't need drama, or a villain twirling a mustache, or a single dramatic moment where the trap snaps shut. It just needs you to keep doing the responsible thing, the thing printed right there in the federally mandated box, month after month for 3 decades, without ever once feeling like anything went wrong. That's not a bug. A trap that requires no mistake to spring is honestly better engineering than one that does. So no, the question was never whether you should pay more than the minimum. You already know that. The default was never counting on you not knowing that. It was counting on the fact that knowing and doing are 2 different muscles, and it only ever needed one of them to stay lazy. The real question is the one the whole model is quietly betting on, that the minimum payment formula only pays for itself if enough people keep pressing the easy button for years without asking why the bill kept shrinking while the debt didn't. $1.25 trillion is currently riding on that bet. What happens to it in a year where the minimum stops being a strategy and just becomes the only number left in the account? That part, nobody's disclosed yet, not even in the box on page 2.